Whether you create a new assignment from scratch or from an existing post in another team, you can attach a digital rubric which you can use to assess your students' work and provide them with timely and meaningful feedback through Microsoft Teams. Let's first take a closer look at what it looks like to create and attach a rubric to an assignment. So here I am in an assignment that I am creating, actually from a previous post. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add Rubric. Now notice that I can select a rubric that I've previously used, even though it is from another team. If I choose this previously created rubric, let's go ahead and do so, and click Next, notice that I can go ahead and edit this rubric, or I can choose to use it as is. Let's click Cancel, and let's click Add Rubric one more time. Now, instead of choosing a previously used rubric, I can also go ahead and click the New Rubric link right up here in the top right corner of this window. And now I can go ahead and create a rubric from scratch. So I will give this rubric a title. Note that this is a required field. And I have the option of entering a brief description. I can choose whether I want to leave it set as just simply levels of achievement, such as excellent, good, fair, and poor. I can always rename these by simply clicking in the text field, highlighting the text, deleting it, and then, of course, typing in what I'd like it to actually say. Or I can turn on points. And now, in addition to levels of achievement, I also see what that category is out of. Let's scroll back here by pressing this back arrow. Notice that I currently only have one row for one criteria. I can add additional rows by pressing the plus button, or I can even copy criteria by pressing the copy button. Notice that, again, because I'm using points, I can even adjust the weighting of each criteria or evenly just redistribute weights across all of the criteria. Now, just as I can add additional criteria, I can also add additional categories. So right now, this is a 4-point rubric. I can always click the plus sign to add another category and make this a 5-point rubric. And once I've set up the structure of my rubric, I can go ahead and start adding content to this rubric. Now, I can always copy and paste content from a Word document. Unfortunately, right now, I have to do so one cell at a time. So I'm going to go ahead and start entering some content. Once I've filled out the rubric, I will go ahead and click Attach to attach it to this particular assignment. And I will click Assign to assign this assignment to my students. Let's now take a look at how we mark an assignment with a digital rubric. So my student has turned in their work for the Understanding My Worldview assignment. I'm going to go ahead and review this work. Now, again, to review submitted work, I simply click on the assignment card. Once inside the assignment, I click on the Review button in the top right corner. Next, in the chart below, underneath the Analytics, I click on the student's work. Notice that my student's PowerPoint opens in PowerPoint Online app in the center screen, but check out the features that I have to the far right. So up at the top here, I have a drop-down menu. If I had more students in this class, I would see all of their names, and this is how I would be able to switch from student to see their work if they have turned something in. Underneath that, I see the file of their work. Below that, I have the link to the rubric. We'll come back to this. And notice I have the feedback box. So one of the things I could do is I could, as I scroll through my student's assignment, make note of feedback here in the feedback box. Let's take a look at how we use the rubric to assess. To access the rubric, I'm simply going to click on the title of the rubric, My Worldviews, here at the far right. Notice that that rubric expands to fill this far right window. Now, at the very top, I can see a tally or a total score out of 100. Below that, I can see, in this case, critical thinking, but if I click the drop-down, you'll notice that this is a drop-down box featuring all the criteria that make up your rubric. So in this case, I'm only assessing two main criteria, critical thinking and communication. Let's start by assessing critical thinking. So I'm inside critical thinking, and I can read over the descriptions of each of the categories, excellent, good, fair, and poor. But I am quite familiar with my students' work, having gone over it a few times, and I know that this particular student used pretty decent examples to explain worldview elements, as well as make connections from the worldview elements to his personal life. So I'm going to go ahead and give this student a 4 or excellent for critical thinking. To do so, I just simply click on the excellent box. I'm ready to now go to my next criteria. So I come up here to the drop down and I click on communication. Now I'm going to go through the student's presentation one more time. Though he did a pretty good job at communicating his ideas, the pictures were supposed to play a huge role in showing those connections to each of the worldview elements. And I think that the student could have chosen more specific pictures for each of the elements. So I'm going to give the student a 3 or good for communication. Now, before I click done, I want you to notice that I can see the student's total score out of 100. And I just want to scroll down here and point out that there is a feedback box below the descriptions of the categories under communication. This feedback box would also appear for the previous category or criteria, critical thinking. So this encourages me as the teacher to give specific, meaningful feedback based on the specific criteria. So again, I can enter that feedback in the box below. All right, now that I have scored my student on the rubric for both criteria and I have entered some feedback, I'm going to come up to the very top and click Done. Now, again, I could enter more general feedback here in the feedback box, as I mentioned previously. If I am finished assessing the student's work and I'm ready to turn it back over to him or her, I can go ahead and click Return here at the bottom. If I had other students registered in this course, I could then come up to the drop-down arrow and select the next student who has turned work in to continue assessing. Once I'm finished assessing my students, I can then close this particular tab by pressing the X here. And this will take me back to my chart with my analytics. You will see the student's work, that it has been returned to the student and at what time I've returned it to the student. As well, if I click feedback, I would see any feedback that had been entered in the general box. And I can see the total score that the student achieved on this particular assignment.